And greetings, good afternoon to all of you listening around the country. My name is Steve Deace, filling in for Brian Fisher on Focal Point here on this Friday. Maybe some of you get a chance to hear me weeknights here on AFR. Our show will be resuming on AFR each night next week. The Steve Deace Show, we syndicated around the country, some of the biggest markets in the country, New York City, Philadelphia, Houston, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, just to name a few. You can learn more about me by visiting our website at stevedeace.com. That's D-E-A-C-E. You can always friend us on Facebook as well as follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. And if you like my idea of snark here today, you'll really want to follow us on Twitter. We're even snarkier on Twitter because it's only 140 characters or less. So we've got to get right to the punchline. We've got to go right for the throat on Twitter. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show, and you can always email the program as well, steve@stevedeace.com. And my last name, if you're new to me, is D-E-A-C-E. So I do a lot of stuff with politics and worldview around the country. I speak around the country. I'm also a contributor for a lot of national publications. I've written for USA Today, Breitbart, The Washington Times, Politico, just to name a few. So the kind of stuff that you're used to hearing from Brian, if that's what you like, I should be right in your wheelhouse here because I do a lot of the same stuff. He's just probably nicer than me. All right. Steve@stevedeace.com, again, is the email address. Coming up later on here this afternoon, why the U.S. military needs the Word of God more than ever before. A friend of mine, Joe Miller, who was the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate out in Alaska last year, has just another tragic story about what's going on with the Christian faith in the U.S. military. Luckily, we're going to talk to some people that have a solution to a story like that later on in this hour. Also later on in this hour, Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal's going to join us. He's had a religious liberty case in his home state that he's been dealing with, courtesy of the Eric Holder Lawless Department over there at the DOJ. And also he wrote an interesting piece on the what I call scamnesty. That's what we call the amnesty being debated, or Rubio Care, if you prefer. The scamnesty bill that is now heading its way to the U.S. House. Bobby wrote an interesting piece about this for National Review, and we'll get to that with him as well. Next hour, Texas Senator Ted Cruz will be with us on defunding Obamacare, and I want to get his reaction to something that a lot of people have told me is unprecedented, at least in recent Supreme Court history. Not just the 5 justices who used their court opinion to essentially write an anti-Christian polemic and say to anybody that believes in the moral foundations that built the country, you're a hater or you're a bigot. That's sad unto itself. But how about the back and forth between Antonin Scalia and Anthony Kennedy? 2 Supreme Court justices going after each other publicly. And Ted, of course, clerked for William Rehnquist when he was the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. So we want to get his take on that a little bit later on. And then if you agree with us that there just can't be any more rhinos, we just can't do this anymore. We can't have Democrat versus Democrat light or Democrat versus statist. Right now we've got 1.5 political parties in America, basically. We've got the Democrat Party and then the Karl Rove wing of the Republican Party. So about half of the Republican Party that would like to be Democrats. And then you've got us. All right. You've got us. So we've got 1.5 political parties in America. If you'd like to actually see if it's possible, it's been a while. It's been a while. I'm 40. I'm trying to think. I think maybe only one of my kids was alive the last time we actually had a Republican nominee who at least pretended to be a standard bearer that was truly different from his Democrat opponent. So if you're like me and it's just been too darn long since that's happened, we've got an effort underway to try to do something about that. And then we're going to close out this afternoon with what I think is the most devastating weapon in a culture war. It's even more devastating than a lawsuit that's successful, righteous legislation, winning an election. It's the most devastating weapon of them all. And it's a good story that's going to lift your spirit on a Friday at a time when, frankly, a lot of our spirits could stand a little lifting given what's going on in the country right now. So make sure you're tuned in for that a little bit later on. But I want to begin with a statement that, at least on the surface today, may sound silly to you. I'm going to make the case that if America and freedom and liberty in these United States of America, Western civilization really, is to be saved, it's all up to the Duggars. Now, I don't want to put that much pressure on one family here this afternoon. All right, but the reality is if it's not up to the Duggars individually, it's up to families like the Duggars. Let me explain. Because I think a lot of times we talk about issues in a philosophical manner. And I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I'm a worldview guy. You know, I was at a lunch yesterday and somebody asked me, hey, if you could go to lunch with anybody and have a private talk with anybody, who would you pick? Now, I will tell you, I'm a little shallow. My first thought was Keith Jackson, the great college football announcer, because like Tim Wildman here on AFR, I'm a college football fiend. I probably know more about college football than any other idiot savant should. So that was my first thought. My second thought, though, was Ravi Zacharias. If I could sit down, because I'm a worldview, I'm a philosophy guy. So when I talk about the fact that sometimes we spend too much time pondering the lint in our navel, I'm talking about me. I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. But there was a science fiction show on about 5 years ago. And one of the things it used to do is tackle a lot of our contemporary political debates, and it will look at both sides of the issue. And it took a look at the abortion issue in one of its episodes. And this series was about human civilization trying to escape being annihilated by, machine-like beings it created that were hunting them down to destroy them and take humanity's place. And the president of what's left of humanity is a woman, and she's a feminist, and she's staunchly for reproductive freedom, which essentially means I want to kill kids. And the commander of the military, he's not political at all. He's a soldier. He's all about honor, duty, right? I'm not here to air my political opinions. I'm here to, fulfill my oath. But he goes to his president and he says, ma'am, I really could care less what your philosophical position on the issue of abortion is. The truth of the matter is, and he takes a whiteboard, not the one you'd like to slap Karl Rove with, his own whiteboard. He takes a whiteboard and he writes a number. It's a few thousand. It's how many thousands of human beings are remaining. And he says, here's the reality. We're out here in deep space. We could be fighting this war. I don't know how long. It could go on past my lifetime. And we're up against an enemy that can just roll off, can procreate off an assembly line. They can procreate in a day what it would take us years to create. So here's the moral of the story. I need live bodies. These ships aren't going to fly themselves. This battle star is not going to pilot itself. We need soldiers. We need people. So you can believe all you want about what to do with your sexuality and your genitalia and reproductive freedom, and that's great, but this is about survival, and we need human beings. And you know how that Madam President responded? At the end of the episode, she outlaws the killing of children, starts promoting procreation and natural families. Because when you strip away all the philosophy and all the morality, and I love doing that stuff. I write articles about it. I write books about it. But when you strip all that away, there's a practicality to this kind of debate. And when we come back, we're going to look at some demographic information that's going to show you that unless we start marrying younger and having a lot more babies, this is not a society that has a long-term future. Stay tuned. More Focal Point in a moment.